Right, I'm Sean Broomhead, medical doctor, background as a clinician, and I still practice about a day a week. But while I was specializing in internal medicine, actually, I started getting interested in what information technology could do to help us do things differently and do things better. And I did a master's in medical informatics through collaboration between UKZN and Harvard, and that got really interesting. We started. But those were the early days where informatics was the name. eHealth didn't exist. There was no such name in those days. Connectivity wasn't great, and what we were trying to do was about low bandwidth options primarily, and that's vastly different to the way the field has emerged today. But once I started getting interested in those things, then things led from there.
And currently, what are you doing in this field?
Right. So I have two roles now. I'm the chair of the African Centre for eHealth Excellence, an NGO that we started a few years ago to help build capacity and leadership with African countries. And we work extensively with African ministries, permanent secretaries, those sorts of people, to help them organize themselves and sort of make the most of this opportunity to change their health systems and to move the health systems forward. But I'm also the Chief Technology Officer at HISP, the Health Information Systems Program in South Africa, that does a lot of on-the-ground implementations in this area, working with South African government and other partners, specifically in South Africa.
So can you mention any specific projects that you've taken into other countries in Africa?
So with ACFI, one of our priorities is eHealth strategy. So there, I actually sit on the WHO's Global eHealth Technical Advisory Group, where I chair their strategy working group with a colleague from Argentina. And there it's about putting together a smart strategy, and that's not as easy as it sounds. And the more we get stuck into it, we realize we're learning every day as well. But strategy is essential from the highest levels in government to set the ground and to provide fertile ground for eHealth projects to work. So I provide that global lead, working with colleagues around the world to think about what makes a good strategy and what are the components of a smart strategy. And then through ACFI we work with African ministries of health to help them develop their eHealth strategies. And what one generally finds is that the ICT part of the strategy is the easy part, because technology is easy. Technology is not where the challenges really lie. Most of the technological challenges have been solved. But applying that in a health setting, applying that to human beings and getting human beings to use the technology in a productive way within their health working lives in a way that's not disruptive, that's where the real interesting part of eHealth lies. And I think that's where more and more work is taking place. And so a good eHealth strategy at a national level needs to not only address the ICT part, but address how it's developing stakeholders, how it's building those stakeholder groups to participate, how it's investing in capacity, how does it build capacity across all of those stakeholder groups, and who are the clinicians they're targeting? Is it doctors, is it nurses, is it home-based carers, is it all of those things?
Community workers,
yeah. And how much is the patient actually an active participant in helping shape how eHealth gets designed for a country? And so the key thing there is recognizing that the biggest part of the eHealth opportunity is how it's going to change individual citizens' lives and how citizens take care of their own health and remain healthy. That's probably where the biggest opportunity lies. That's not where the biggest investment is at the moment. And so a good national eHealth strategy is a well-structured approach to the whole spectrum that recognizes the really detailed, heavily technological orientated things we can do to support doctors, but there are also some easy, smart, simple things we can do to help people take responsibility for their own health, and to cover that whole spectrum in a smart way that sets out a roadmap and allows all the different people that want to invest in this area to invest in a constructive way. That's a good eHealth strategy, and that's where so I spend a lot of time with my ACFI colleagues doing that sort of work.
Have you found it hard to persuade politicians and leaders that that's the way to go, or is that the easy part?
I wouldn't say easy, but in Africa, the leaders and the politicians we work with are very aware of the opportunity. That's not where the convincing lies. where they need convincing is to understand that investing in this opportunity is a smart use of their money, that it's going to generate the returns.
It's going to be better than something else as well.
Well, that's a difficult argument. So one tries to steer away from the argument, do I buy drugs or do I invest in technology? Because any smart Minister of Health is going to buy drugs or invest in staff or hire nurses. He's not going to, if it was a choice. So it's more to say that when I'm buying drugs and when I'm hiring nurses, if I have a good e-health strategy in place, that can help me buy the right drugs and deploy them in the right way and make the best use of those drugs. It will help me choose where my nurses should be and help me support those nurses once they're out in the field. So it's how do I combine all these pieces in a way that makes the most sense.
No, I'm just thinking how much of this can be governed from a central point and how much is built from a bit of bottom up. What is the local community responsibility versus the national politicians?
I think the big benefits will come from the bottom up, but the bottom up part is really difficult if some of the basic foundation elements are not in place. So it's about finding the right balance between those. And the national foundation elements are things like connectivity. If you're not connected, how do you embrace the connected world? Regulation. We talked a little bit about this. We don't want too much regulation because that restricts investment and restricts movement, but there need to be some basic protections in place, protections of privacy and confidentiality.
Personal information.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are some important things that need to happen centrally, and there needs to be a national lead on that. But once those pieces are in place, then the real benefits will come from the base moving and the base mobilizing because they see the advantage. And that is something that needs to be felt in a real way. A health worker needs to feel the improved working life that we may envisage. They can't be asked to go and find the way that it's going to be better. That they need to really feel that difference. And that for me is the crux of e-health or m-health, that as long as we're only trying to improve the current system, improve efficiencies in the current system, we're not really embracing the opportunity. The opportunity is to say, because we have a device that's connected, because with that device we're able to do things, we're going to practice medicine fundamentally differently.
Hopefully better.
But so differently, and we need to allow the idea that it's going to be very different and better. And that as a citizen, because I have a device in my hand, I'm going to look after my health very differently to the way I would have before. Because then it starts changing the landscape fundamentally, and that's where the benefits really lie.
So if you would pick the three, as you see them, the three main barriers to really make this a smooth rollout of this new way of getting healthcare, what would they be?
So Africa's where I mainly work. So in Africa, number one, affordability. We need to work really, really hard on justifying why money should be spent in this area rather than another area, and packaging that in a way that makes sense. Many of the economic models show good cost benefit, but it's just not affordable. So affordability, number one, needs to be tackled. Once that's dealt with, the technological challenge primarily is connectivity. Once you're connected, the technology is not the challenge. There are many fantastic solutions and many more in the pipeline that we'll see coming through in the next few years. And then the third one is a very human element, and that's trust. Do people trust that this solution you're presenting is worth the time to invest in it, and will give them something that they can trust as much as they trust their local doctor to make a decision and advise them.
So affordability, connectivity, and trust.
Yeah.
Are main elements. Okay,
And
interesting.
many others, but those those would be the ones to deal with.
Anything else you feel you'd like to say we haven't covered?
No, we're super being here. I think that what we learnt over the last couple of days was that there are some exciting opportunities around how the emerging technologies can be leveraged, but also there are some challenges that we hadn't necessarily perceived before we came into this workshop, particularly around very different types of people's understanding of what we're trying to do. So as a sector,
All
meaning that
speaking the same language
Yeah.
with the terminology, even
Well,
for starters. Yeah.
the terminology is a big
Yeah.
piece, but it's conceptualizing how we are going to be working together to create this strengthened, transformed health service. And we've realizing over the last couple of days we haven't quite figured out how we should work together, and so we need to spend more time on that as an industry.